convicted Mexican drug lord El Chapo. A federal judge right here in New York City today sentencing Joaquin Guzman to life in prison plus 30 years.
A man sits in a prison cell, buried 23 hours a day in concrete and silence, somewhere in the Colorado desert. No sunlight, no visitors, no contact with the outside world. The United States government considers him so dangerous that even his lawyers are monitored. That man is Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. And here's what should terrify you. His arrest changed almost nothing. The drugs are still flowing. The money is still moving. The organization he helped build is still operating in over 50 countries, still responsible for the majority of fentanyl killing Americans every single day. And it just survived its own leaders betraying each other. The Sinaloa Cartel is not a gang. It is not a mob. It is something the world has rarely seen before. A criminal empire so well engineered that it outlives its own kings. This is how it was built. This is how it works. And this is why it's still winning. To understand the Sinaloa Cartel, you have to go back to the mountains of northwestern Mexico, the Sierra Madre Occidental, the rugged highland region of the state of Sinaloa. For decades, these mountains had been home to small-scale opium and marijuana growers, peasant farmers who sold to local traffickers. The terrain was remote, the federal government barely present, and corruption was simply the cost of doing business. In the 1980s, Mexico's drug trade was largely controlled by one man, Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, El Padrino, the Godfather. He was the first Mexican trafficker to forge a serious alliance with Colombia's Medellin cartel, trading Mexican smuggling routes for a cut of the cocaine. Clean, efficient, enormously profitable. Then, in 1989, he was arrested. And before going to prison, he did something remarkable. He divided his empire into regional territories and assigned each to trusted lieutenants. One of those territories, the Pacific Corridor running through Sinaloa, went to a loose coalition of traffickers from the mountain town of Badiraguato. Among them, a stocky, ambitious, third-grade dropout named Joaquin Guzman Loera. You already know what happens next. El Chapo was born in 1957 in La Tuna, a village so small and so remote it barely exists on maps. No running water, no electricity. He left school before he could read properly and started working for local drug growers as a teenager. But he was sharp, relentless, and completely without fear. He rose quickly through Felix Gallardo's organization, earning a reputation as a logistics genius, someone who could move product across the border faster, cheaper, and more reliably than anyone else. When the empire was divided, El Chapo wasn't just a recipient. He was hungry for more. His most important alliance came with a man who is, in many ways, the real architect of the modern Sinaloa Cartel, Ismael El Mayo Zambada Garcia, older, calmer, more strategic. Where El Chapo was flashy and impulsive, El Mayo was invisible. He never got arrested, he barely got photographed. He was a ghost with a billion-dollar operation. Together, they went to war, against the Arellano Felix brothers in Tijuana, against rival factions, against anyone who challenged their hold on the Pacific route. The violence was extreme. Assassinations at airports, shootouts at quinceañeras, bodies left in the streets as messages. In 1993, El Chapo was captured in Guatemala and sentenced to 20 years. He escaped in 2001, hidden in a laundry cart. And when he came back angry and far more organized. This is the part most people don't understand. The Sinaloa Cartel isn't powerful because it's violent. Plenty of criminal organizations are violent. It's powerful because it is run like a business, and a very good one, moving the product. The cartel has pioneered virtually every smuggling method imaginable. Underground tunnels beneath the US-Mexico border, some with railways, lighting, and ventilation systems. Narco submarines gliding semi-submerged through the Pacific. Catapults, drones. Shipments hidden inside jalapeno cans, frozen carrots, and hollowed-out car engines. They have used FedEx. They have used Amazon. If there's a border, they've found a way through it. Their product mix has evolved with the market. Marijuana in the 70s, heroin and cocaine through the 80s and 90s, and now, most lethally, fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, cheap to produce, easy to conceal, and catastrophically addictive. The DEA says the Sinaloa Cartel is the single largest source of fentanyl in the United States. The opioid crisis isn't just a public health story. It's partly a Sinaloa Cartel story. Corruption as infrastructure. Plata o plomo. Silver or lead. Take the bribe. or take the bullet. Thousands of Mexican police officers, soldiers, judges, and politicians have been on the cartel's payroll. This isn't incidental. It is structural. Corruption isn't a side effect of the Sinaloa Cartel's power. It is one of its primary business tools. In 2023, Mexico's former Secretary of Public Security, the country's top law enforcement official, was convicted in a New York court of accepting millions in cartel bribes. The cartel wasn't just buying cops, it was buying the man in charge of catching the cartel. The franchise model, unlike the Medellin cartel's rigid top-down hierarchy, which collapsed the moment its leader died, Sinaloa is decentralized. Semi-autonomous cells operate across regions and countries. They share infrastructure, routes, and protection, but each unit can survive independently. Cut off one branch, the tree keeps growing. This is why the cartel survived El Chapo's first arrest in 1993, his second in 2014, his extradition in 2017, and El Mayo's arrest in 2024. No empire goes unchallenged. The Sinaloa cartel's most dangerous early rival was the Zetas, a group of Mexican Special Forces soldiers who defected and became enforcers, then broke off to run their own operation. Where Sinaloa preferred business, the Zetas preferred terror. Mass executions, decapitations. Civilians killed as a warning. Pure brutality as a business strategy. The war between cartel factions, Sinaloa, Zetas, Tijuana, Juarez, turned parts of Mexico into something unrecognizable. Between 2006 and 2012, an estimated 60,000 people were killed. Ciudad Juarez became one of the deadliest cities on earth. Journalists, mayors, police chiefs, no one was safe. Sinaloa won that era, not because they were the most violent, but because they were the most strategic. They could out-corrupt, out-organize, and outmaneuver almost everyone. Their biggest threat today? CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, led by a man known as El Mencho, currently among the most wanted criminals in the world. CJNG is young, aggressive, and expanding fast. The war between Sinaloa and CJNG is ongoing, and it is ugly. El Chapo was recaptured in 2014. In 2015, he escaped through a mile-long tunnel dug into the floor of his maximum security prison shower. It became an international embarrassment for Mexico. He was caught again in January 2016, extradited to the US in 2017, tried in New York in 2018. A trial that was part criminal proceeding, part Netflix series. Witnesses described murders, buried bodies, and bribes paid to heads of state. His own legal team was investigated for smuggling messages to the cartel. He was convicted on all counts. Life in prison plus 30 years. He now sits in ADX Florence, the Supermax, in near total isolation. And then came the twist no one saw coming. In July 2024, El Mayo, Ismael Zambada, the Ghost, the man who had evaded capture for his entire career, was arrested in the United States. He didn't get caught, he was delivered. Lured onto a private plane, reportedly by Joaquin Guzman Lopez, one of El Chapo's own sons, in what appears to have been a deal with American federal authorities. The fallout was immediate. Two factions of the Sinaloa Cartel, those loyal to El Mayo and those loyal to the Guzman family, went to war with each other. Gunfights in the streets of Culiacan, hundreds dead. An organization that had prided itself on internal discipline, tearing itself apart. The Sinaloa Cartel is fractured. But it is not finished. Here's the uncomfortable truth at the end of all of this. We arrested El Chapo. We arrested El Mayo. We've spent billions on border enforcement, drug interdiction, and military operations, and Americans are still dying of fentanyl overdoses at record rates. The drugs are still coming. The money is still flowing. Why? Because the Sinaloa Cartel didn't create the demand. It just answered it. The opioid crisis was ignited by legal pharmaceutical companies. The poverty that funnels young men into cartel recruitment exists because of structural failures no law enforcement operation can fix. The corruption that protects the cartel is rooted in institutions that were broken long before El Chapo was born. You can arrest a king, you can even arrest two kings. But as long as the system that made them remains unchanged, the poverty, the corruption, the demand, the impunity, the throne will never stay empty for long. That's the lesson of the Sinaloa Cartel. It's not a story about evil men. It's a story about the world we built and the organizations that learned to thrive inside it.